Lately, for some reason, I've been completely taken with the song Candy-O, which surprisingly was never released as a single. I spent a good amount of time watching different live versions of the Cars perform this song, and if you've been following me, you know that I can't help but repeating myself that I find these songs so freaking amazing 46 years on. I listen to them over and over, and I never tire of them, and I pick up new things every time I hear them. Maybe they haven't gotten old because I didn't overdose on them back in the day. I listened to the Cars and enjoyed them, but I wasn't a huge fan. 1979, June 13th, the Cars' second album, Candy-O, was released. It reached number 3 on the Billboard Hot 200 the week of August 26th, outperforming their spectacular debut album, released just about a year earlier. That peaked at 14 and was still on the charts when Candy-O came out. The second album was recorded in a little over 2 weeks, a few days longer than it took to record the first album. It was again produced that previous winter by Roy Thomas Baker, in my opinion, their best producer, at Cherokee Studios in LA. The first single released was the classic Benjamin Orr song Let's Go. It peaked at number 14 on the charts. The second single is my favorite song, It's All I Can Do, and that peaked at 41. It's completely astonishing to me that it didn't chart higher for whatever reason. I found that to really appreciate the Cars takes time. At first listen, they were fun and cool. I mean, the real and authentic definition of rock and roll cool, indifferent, enigmatic, sexy, and definitely different looking and sounding than anyone else. You heard the fresh new waviness of the Cars' first album and then Candy-O, the sort of mindless pop of a song like Shake It Up, and then the smooth, synth-heavy, slick sounds of Heartbeat City. But when you listen 10, 20, 100 times, you find something else behind the gloss. That brilliant layering of sound, the absolute technical excellence of the musicianship, Rick's unique way of playing that palm-muted rhythm guitar, and Benjamin's bass playing. He doesn't get enough credit for it, but he was really quite skilled at creating that signature Cars sound, and that he could match David's drumming beat for beat on songs like Gimme Some Slack rivals any great bassist of the time. And Elliot Easton. No one, and I mean no one, could or can replicate EE's tone, his sound, his unique skill set. When Ben was performing with different rock bands later on, his own Orr band, Voices of Classic Rock, Big People, as great and as accomplished as those musicians were, they were never able to quite match the way Elliot, or the rest of the Cars for that matter, sounded. Ben's voice was always perfect, all the way up until he was ravaged by cancer. But again, in my opinion, none of those bands really did the Cars justice on Just What I Needed or Let's Go or Candy-O. I mean, it wasn't from trying, and it wasn't just that Elliot's playing had an intelligence and an intuitiveness about what was just right for every song. He had an ear and skills that were far and above. He was the right guitarist for the time, the cross-pollinator of new wave, punk, rock, pop, rockabilly, calling on influences from the Beatles, the Beach Boys, Buddy Holly, the Velvet Underground, Mike Bloomfield, his time playing country and bluegrass in bars in the Combat Zone, and Greg Hawkes. He was able to key in, literally and figuratively, on the exact sound that Rick, as the primary songwriter, intended. But back to my latest obsession with the song Candy-O. Interestingly, the band performed it while they were on tour promoting their first album, so obviously Rick had already written it and they were working on it. It was on their set list when they played at the Alma Combo in Toronto and the Agora in Cleveland in 1978. Rick was such a prolific songwriter that he had such a huge cache of songs all ready for each successive album, except for, I think, Door to Door, but that's a whole different story. One of the most compelling live versions of Candy-O is from the band's 1979 appearance, which was their second on the Midnight Special. Ben looked absolutely stoned out of his gourd. dark hair with that skunk stripe and his signature shag cut, and that sexy zebra top. But he delivered an absolutely mesmerizing version of the song. I think this is a peak performance for the guys. They are just pulsating with electricity. That driving beat at the beginning, Rick's rhythm guitar setting the mood. And Ben comes in with that Rickenbacker, that boop boop bass 2 measures in, while also starting to sing, his voice all deep and sexy. Watching Elliot play his solo on this version, he is so completely and totally into it. I mean, he was just fired up, dressed all in red, setting that red Fender Telly on fire. All of the elements crescendoing at the end for a raucous cacophony of edgy new wave power pop. It was delectable. I really believe that smaller stages and venues suited the band better than large arenas and stadiums. At the beginning, the 5 of them appeared to have had such fantastic chemistry, especially Ben and Elliot on their side of the stage. That connection seemed to have been lost later on as their fame grew and the stages got larger, symbolic of the disintegration of their kinship. Who knows? Their 2 performances on the Midnight Special in 78 and 79 emphasized their really unique style and presentation, the way they focused on playing an absolute killer live show that sounded just like their recordings. I prefer watching these shows rather than any of their videos from the MTV days. Something in their essence changed once they started becoming MTV darlings. Another killer performance of Candy-O was a December 7th, 1982 fundraiser for a children's charity at the Metro in Boston. If I'm correct, I think I read that they didn't go on stage until pretty late in the evening, or rather the morning, like 1 a.m. or something. This performance is H.O.T. hot. Ben, ever the chameleon, was sporting a different look. His hair looked like its natural shade of brown, and he was wearing a headband a la Mike Reno from Loverboy. Only Ben did it better. And a black leather jacket. Ben in black, leather, a sight to behold. This performance was another instance of pure energy. They seemed to be really animated, and Ben was in full rock star mode here. The video footage focuses a lot on Ben, and he appears to be having a blast, playing to the crowd. And Rick was actually somewhat animated, bopping in time with the beat. Like I said, this band was made to perform in smaller venues where the audience was up close and the band's energy seemed more animated and vibrant. So this was 1982, a year after Shake It Up came out, and about the time they took a break from the Cars to focus on solo work. Elliot and Rick were working on their project at this time, and Ben had signed to do his solo album as well. They had just come off 4 years of recording and touring, for the fateful 6 months of recording Heartbeat City in 1983. They appeared to be on top of the world, new wave darlings, with the world for their taking. Such a heady time for the guys who had spent a lot of time in the weeds just trying for their break in the industry. I read an interesting observation when someone commented on the Midnight Special reel that when Ben sang in a lower register, he sounded like Jim Morrison. And I thought, what a revelation. I'd never thought of that before, so I had to listen and compare, and it's so true. Morrison is another of my favorite rock stars. The more I think about it, the 2 bands had some interesting things in common. Like the Cars, the Doors were Elektra artists whose sound was unique and unlike anyone else recording at the time. And Jim, like Ben, was sexy as hell, had mesmerizing stage presence, and was somewhat mysterious. And also like Ben, he was a devotee of black leather pants. I'm going to post some links in the comments so you can kind of hear the similarities in the singing. When Jim was singing LA Woman and Touch Me, you can really hear the similarity, especially with Ben singing Moving in Stereo. So listen and see if you don't see the connection or the similarity. 2 absolute vocal geniuses, and both sadly gone way too soon. Jim Morrison over 50 years and Benjamin coming up on 25. What the hell is it possible that Ben died almost a quarter of a century ago? Anyway, if you haven't given Candy-O a deep listen ever or in a long time, do yourself a favor, put on some headphones, distract yourself, homogenize, decentralize, and travel back to a time when the music was great, life was more fun, and the Cars were making spectacular music.